While we're talking about positions, Mayor, under Parks and Recreation, we are once again budgeting this event and recreation program coordinator. Has that position been functioning? I know that we've had someone filling that position now for several years, and I quite honestly haven't seen much that I can recognize in that type of activity.
What page is the Parks and Recreation?
67.
And I have a question about that too.
Commissioner, to answer your question about that, as I look forward to what our responsibilities are for recreational and parks programs, one of the things I really want to focus on is the city upholding our end on the maintenance of facilities, and I believe that should be our role. I think that we are involved in some programs now, and we'll continue to be involved in some programs. But the direction that the city was going to take at one time when this position was created and the person was hired was that we were going to basically take over running all the parks and recreation programs. And so this was just the beginning of several positions that were going to need to be added to be able to do that. I think since then there's been a reevaluation. I know that I've reevaluated it. I don't think that's the direction that I see us going in. I think that what I would like to do is leverage the organizations that run some programs in the community now, like I've spoken with the park board about, the EGRTs, the soccer associations, the Ys, and any other person that wants to run an organization in town, perhaps the BMX bike folks, and utilize their expertise, their capabilities to offer these recreational programs. Specific position you're talking about is still valuable to us because that position does a lot of things, coordinate special events for one of them. That's probably where your interaction has been on some instances. That person also does recreational things. In fact, he's very involved right now with the pool. As you know, I attempted to work with the Y. That deal did not work out for this year, so we'll be running the pool. And Cole will be very involved over there, working with programs over there such as swimming lessons. We know that's very important. I think we'll be working with EGRT on that as well for those swimming lessons. Champion Gym's another place that he coordinates and goes over there and makes sure that court is open and available. He's also a valuable member of the parks team, available for other duties and special projects as needed in summer.
Here's my question though. When we decided, and I don't remember if this was a group decision or if this was a city management decision, when we made the change over to the city taking over the programs. But from my perspective and from, just watching it as a mom of kids, it didn't even appear to me that anything was ever done in that regard. We talked about it and said this is what's going to happen, and then here comes summer and nothing was done about it.
Well, we did not have. I agree. I remember sitting through a study session where I think we showed a million things on the screen that we were going to be able to do, but that was in anticipation of adding more people to actually do that. I think the city had not. It was going to take a year to transition to that if we were going to do that. In other words, a year to tell these organizations that the city was going to run these organizations, run these events in the future, and then staff up more to be able to do that. We ended up doing some events. There were movies in David Allen Ballpark, there were movies in the swimming pool, there were dodgeball tournaments, 3-on-3 basketball.
Yeah, I do that stuff in my free time, so to me, that doesn't really say much. Because I thought the whole point of creating this Parks and Recreation department, that was the goal of the whole department, was that. I thought that was a big part of that whole department. And when we talked about all this before, that wasn't the goal of that department. The part we created, because we had gotten rid of the Parks and Recreation department a long time ago, and basically our public works people and our street people were mowing the parks. And we decided, because they were so horrible, and after our park bond got tanked, then we moved into, we created this Parks and Recreation department to take care of the parks and do all those things, but also to take over the summer programs, and that was the whole deal. So we did allot the people at the time to do that, and we had gone through what all those people were going to do, and they just didn't do it. It wasn't a matter of the people not being there; it was a matter of they didn't do it.
I know. This was model that we were trying to emulate that other communities have put together, where the city doesn't just do the minimum to keep our parks on. We did some programming. And there's some kinds of programming where it makes so much sense for some third party to do, especially when it's their time, their volunteer time. But there's some kinds of programming that simply fit better under the city mantle. And it may not be the kind of core service in the same way that providing water is, but there are some kinds of programming that there just isn't somebody else to step in and fill. And I think we gain a lot in terms of quality of life by doing it. We invest a lot in quality of life every year in concrete in the ground and equipment and all that stuff. But some of the quality of life investment I think we all expected to come from this recreation part never quite materialized. I mean, like the movies in the park, that was great, love those. In fact, one of the things I mentioned on here, we have a budgeted item, $1,800 for rental of the blow-up screen and stuff to do more movies. And I think that's great, though it might make sense because I think one of those that's kind of one of those rentals where you look at get hosed in a rental. Let's just spend 10 grand and buy our own blow-up screen and projector and do some movies for people. Because people love those, they were huge.
Buy a blow-up screen for less than $500.
Well, I mean, projector for, there may be a matter of scale, but I would like to see that under 4413 bumped up from 1800 to I don't know exactly what the number is. Maybe before we get a budget approved, somebody could go on Amazon and pull one up. But I think that's one of those programming niches, like Tammy is talking about, where the city will fill that role better than anybody else. So let's do some of these programming things and let's actually do them.
Well, and if somebody else is going to do them, the city shouldn't make it so flipping hard to do.
And but that's a separate.
That's a separate. Well, but it's not. It's not because it's under this department. It's who you have to deal with, and it's not easy. But aside from all that, my whole deal is I just don't want it to go back to where we're just mowing the parks, because that didn't work.
I agree, because I thought the original intent was, the original kind of money shift of the DNR department was to make the grounds better and so forth. But I remember a presentation where didn't we buy some software to do scheduling, and the background that I was coming from was after numerous complaints
And it was all a lot
from
of
constituents about, the soccer league isn't treating all the people fair, and the baseball teams, there's the semi-pro teams within the EJRT, and there was people complaining about it. And in my mind, the solution to all that, to make it fair for the community, was that the city should take over all the scheduling of that. And I wanted to see us expand that role, not decrease it. So I'm not sure where the disconnect, I think, between kind of what we wanted and what you understood the orders to be, marching orders to be. I think our impression is that we want to increase the city's role in overseeing and running those programs for the benefit of all the kids, including the mowing and keeping up the fields, which we made great strides on.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds to me like you're kind of going backwards from what we thought we were doing. Because I know EJRT is very close to Ron's heart. He's been a part of that for years and years and years. But there was a time last year when it was my opinion we should eliminate it. The city should take that over.
Well, you did. You took all the money that, what they were getting, the little money they were getting.
All 25,000.
Eliminate. Yeah, just in the amount that they,
Sure.
They're ending up doing both of those duties anyway. But,
Well,
and that's not either here or there. I think that one of the things that Gerald's alluding to is if we really want to have done what you're talking about doing, it's going to cost us a lot more than we're spending now. You're going to have to hire a staff of people to do it. One person's
The
not going to do
presentation,
it.
no, the presentation that we saw when we talked about this showed the positions that were there and what each one of those positions was going to do. So that was already all planned out. And so from my perspective, they just didn't do it. I mean, and I've heard, I don't care what, you hear rumors whether people are supposed to talk or not. You hear so-and-so dropped the ball, or so-and-so, just forgot that we were going to have tennis this summer, or whatever. That's neither here nor there, but it's an issue. It didn't happen. Whatever happened, it didn't happen. And our goal as a body was for that to happen. And I don't want to go backwards to where we're just mowing crap and not doing anything. And I think it's fine if we have EJRT and we have those different things, then we all work in concert together. But I don't want us to just give up because we didn't do it one year.
I will say from the park boards, we've talked about this excessively at park board meetings. We looked at a couple options. Matt Beck, before he was coached by Stillwater, put together a presentation on what some potential mechanism would be to moving towards what you talked about. And there was at one point even a rough, very rough cost associated with it. Though I gotta say, it was a lot rosier than I thought it would be. And again, it was a rough projection, but one of the projections indicated that there is a lot of potential revenue not being captured at these fields by backboard advertising and concession revenue, and that it wouldn't be a giant money pit. That I'm, not by any means break even, but.
And that was the whole point of all that, was we talked about all of those things, being, by the city being able to do this, we talked about how we could make some revenue happen from these things.
Sure. And so I just only say that from Park Board, we talked about this, that there are options, that if this is something we want to do, we need to make it abundantly clear at the city commission level that we want to do this. It is, and maybe we do and maybe we don't. It will be expensive. And there may be a middle ground. Part of also what we have had the opportunity to do in Park Board over the last 6 or 8 months, we kind of started digging into this more, is meeting with some of the folks from the soccer club and EJRT and I don't remember what all the sports, the Y League and some other stuff. And there's some really, really valuable volunteer time that we wouldn't have to pay for if we could do a more effective job of coordinating it. I don't know what the solution is, and I think it may be we need to, I don't know where it is, but the option is there if we want to do it. But I think Ron's correct in that it will cost more money than what we have on paper. I'd like to see a middle ground. I'd like to see a middle ground where we incorporate this free time from these other entities, where we do the scheduling, we incorporate it, and we do some programming. Because I think there is just simply some valuable programming that we as a city can do that will fill a niche, people appropriate and appreciate rather, and then, quality life, we do that.
Mayor, I would like to just say that, because I was from the beginning all the way through with this, with the sports fields and EJRT and the whole thing. It was necessary because the entities had taken control of the fields and the general public could get on them if they wanted to. And that was part of the problem. So that was an absolute. The park study does identify that to transition us into being able to take on programming and actually doing all those things. And it did lay out quite a lengthy list of adjustments to the personnel.
Wasn't there some reorganization done also?
We did that.
And however,
We did, but we didn't have those positions.
We did not follow the park plan. Jim McClain and Rob at that time came in and said, we can do it for this. And I think that's where they came up with a plan thinking they could do it, and found that they didn't ask for enough money to do that in that year. I mean, that would be my summary.
How many positions do we really have? We just have a cold.
We didn't ask for anything.
They just moved people, they shifted people around.
It is
Works and different things.
absolutely, they have done a tremendous job on the field.
Except for the girls softball field still sucks.
Are we talking about a government spring small?
There is no.
If you ask my opinion, it shouldn't even
It
be
should
on
be,
government springs.
it's terrible, and I'm so having phone calls about government springs.
I
But
think
they have done all that.
our ballparks are better than they ever have.
Well, go
But
play on the
as
field
far
for
as
grass.
getting involved in
Think about that.
scheduling, I'd rather have complaints about a pothole than a mom and dad one time our kids are going to play.
Well, it's not that kind of scheduling. It's just maintaining who is on the field. In other words, if CGRT is playing, they have to give their schedule to us so that we know who's going to be on the field at what time and what days. And if somebody else wants to be on the field and it's not being used, we can allow